Well, Ibrahim al-Assil is a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute and joins me now to discuss this. And for the proponents of this conference or this summit, this is a watershed moment where Syrians are chartering their own future for the first time in their lives. For critics, it's a hastily planned event falling short on inclusivity. You were in Syria some weeks ago. To your mind, just how significant is this summit and what are the key takeaways so far?
It's absolutely significant, and Syrians have been waiting for this moment for a long time, before the fall of the Assad regime and after the fall of the Assad regime, for them to be able to participate in how their government and their country looks like, what kind of social contract Syria will have, and who is going to govern Syria and how. However, there is also lots of criticism about how this conference or this dialogue was prepared, how the invitations were sent out only within one day to many participants. Many of them were not able to make it to the dialogue. Some people think that was on purpose because the authorities wanted to exclude some of those voices, while others say this is because of how the situation is on the ground, because also it's very complicated and there is different competing priorities inside Syria that motivated or pushed the authority to try to reach this dialogue, and at the end, within a few hours probably, to reach a statement for this dialogue that it's very necessary to generate more legitimacy for this authority.
Yeah, and this summit also, of course, geared towards Arab and Western leaders who want to see moderate and inclusive leadership, they say, from this government going forward in order to financially support it. Now, on Monday, the European Union suspending some key sanctions against Syria's energy and banking sector, keeping others in place. The US still to provide any sanctions relief. This is how Syria's foreign minister described it today. Have a listen.
We were clear in our positions that these sanctions are illegitimate and are not based on any legal or moral foundations, but they are being used as a means of pressure on the will of the Syrian people.
I wonder whether you see what has happened at the summit and the narrative from Syria today as in any way moving the needle towards potential further sanctions relief.
I think this is a great question because the domestic dimension inside Syria is pretty much related and connected to the regional and global ones, especially when we talk about legitimacy and also the issue of sanctions. And I think that was one of the reasons why there was a race against time to have this dialogue, and unfortunately it also produced criticism against it. But there is a need also to generate more legitimacy for this Syrian authority to conduct more meetings regionally and globally to push towards lifting sanctions. And the time window is very narrow for that, because if there is some economic rehabilitation inside Syria, and if the economy doesn't get better inside Syria, things might lead to more fragmentation. And here I want to highlight that sanctions are designed in a way to make every day worse than the day before. So while the Assad regime fell, things in Syria are still getting worse economically speaking, because sanctions are designed to do so. We see that there are more steps from the European side to lift or at least to waive many of those sanctions. The United States is still very hesitant to do that, and actually might lead to exacerbating the problem inside Syria, Becky.
While you and I talk, I'm showing some images of the interim leader of Syria with regional leaders, Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, and importantly, perhaps, and both are important, the leader of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan. Turkey, of course, to the northern border. Some Kurds were invited to the national dialogue, but the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces that control most of that northeast of the country of Syria were not. Explain why and whether that undermines this, this notion of inclusivity, if you will.
It absolutely undermines the issue of inclusivity, and that's one of the major challenges inside Syria today. The Kurds, the Syrian Kurds in the northeast of Syria, and we have the major armed group, the Syrian Democratic Forces, supported by the United States, and it conducted the fight against, or major fight against ISIS in the northeast. This is a complex issue because the Kurds faced major grievances from the Assad regime, but also there is distrust when we talk about political cleavages inside Syria between Arabs and Kurds. And this issue is further complicated by the Turkish dimension, because the outcome here, to reach a sustainable outcome, we need an agreement between Damascus or the Arabs with the Kurds and the Turks at the same time, or at least to be accepted by the Turks and their national security, or we might reach a point where there is a Turkish incursion inside Syria. However, I don't think the dialogue today checks that box. I don't think it answers that issue. It's taking small steps. They are positive steps, but still they are not enough. And I think that's also part of the cleavage between the center and the periphery inside Syria that Damascus inherited from the previous regime, and it still hasn't been able to solve it or to reach a point that actually satisfies different actors inside Syria.
Important insight. I know you were in Turkey just a couple of days ago, and as I say, on the ground in Syria just some weeks ago. To get your insight and analysis is extremely useful. Thank you very much indeed, Ibrahim.